Welcome back to Jim's Movie Musings, your guide to movies available on streaming. And for this episode, I'll be reviewing Rurouni Kenshin: The Beginning, which happens to be the follow-up to the last movie I reviewed, Rurouni Kenshin: The Final. There's a saying that one should be careful what one wishes for. And in my case, that happens to be true. In the last review I gave of Rurouni Kenshin: The Final, I kind of griped that the series, which by now is 5 movies long, by then was 4 movies long, was getting repetitive. I complained that there was a bit of formula to it, that somebody shows up from the hero Kenshin Himuro's past and poses a threat or threatens to destroy everything or everyone he holds dear. Long story short. And, well, to the credit of the filmmakers headed by director Keiichi Otomo, they have done something different with this film. This film is basically the origin of Kenshin Himura. It explains how he went from a country boy knowing how to handle a sword to a cold-blooded killer, aka Batusai, and to a wandering Ronin. And it also tells the story of how he met and fell in love with the woman who was introduced in the last film as his wife, Tomoe, who met a very tragic fate. Okay. Now, this movie is a big departure in tone from the previous 4 movies, which, while extremely violent, were always leavened by some kind of humor. They had sidekicks like Sanosuke, Kaoru, people who lighten the tone of the movie either through humor or introducing, a bit of, shall we say, friendly kind of banter into the conversation, especially since Kaoru was Kenshin's love interest. It always kind of helped lighten the tone of the movie. Here, all of that is gone. Okay, and it's basically about Kenshin Himura descending, into the inferno of being a killer, and how this woman Tomoe brought him out of it, only to meet a tragic fate. Okay. Now, in terms of premise, that's all very promising, and like I said, the problem isn't that they tried something new. The problem, to my mind, is with the execution. Okay, so we got everything we're used to from the last 4 movies. All the action, the incredible choreography, by the way. But because the filmmakers are trying to introduce an element of high drama and are stepping a bit out of their comfort zone, the problem that I see is that they're not quite willing to do the work to get us to invest in this new type of storytelling. For example, they want us to see that Kenshin Himura was a revolutionary, okay, of some sort, that he fought against the shogun. And yet they never tell us why he went from just knowing how to handle a sword to believing that the world would be a better place if he murdered the dozens of people that he kills in the course of this movie. We're basically just meant to believe that somebody told him it was a good idea, so he did it. And that doesn't speak very well of the character. It makes him look like a fanatic. It makes him look like somebody who's just extremely gullible. And then he gets talked out of this murderous streak by a woman whom he barely knows. So that's just the double whammy there. Anyway, I could go on here, but the point is, I welcome the fact that this movie tries to do something different from everyone that came before it. And I appreciate the usual attention to detail we get in the fighting scenes. I appreciate the performance of the lead, Takeru Sato, who is no longer flanked by his usual co-stars. But there's a lot about this movie that doesn't work. I didn't quite connect. I didn't quite get or see or perceive any chemistry between Kenshin Himura and his leading lady Tomoe. It just their love story kind of felt like a, sorry to say this, some kind of variation on Stockholm syndrome I didn't see it. I didn't see why she should fall for him or vice versa. But the one point that I keep getting back to is I really didn't accept the explanation that the movie gave as to why he became a killer. Okay, it just tells us that he does. That he was somehow indoctrinated, and that's it. Okay. I was glad that they took the step of trying to explain his past, but I was really disappointed that they didn't put in the work. Okay. So as movies go, well, this is really, for me, it's the weakest entry in the entire series, even if it's arguably the most daring in terms of what it tries to do. And even though the action's there, all the trimmings are there, the basic narrative failings of this movie compel me to give this a 6 out of 10. I cannot do any better than that because the filmmakers could not be bothered to do any better. And in that note, I really hope that this is not the last we see of this character. I hope they get at least that he gets at least some kind of epilogue, because this has been a very enjoyable series for the most part, and I think the series should end on some kind of high note. Okay, so that's all for this review. If you like what you see, remember to give me a like and a subscribe.